Now, this particular mod is actually kind of cool. Another lens mod here, but this one uses the Nintendo Labo lenses. And one of the things that a lot of people noticed, and something you can notice right here right away, is that not only are the lenses absolutely massive, they don't have the Fresnel circles that are typical with Fresnel lenses, and you have a much wider field of view, much bigger sweet spot, and these adapters just fit right into your Vive. The only thing that you really need to do after getting this adapter is that you need to get this distortion file, and I'll have that in the link description below, so you can always kind of take a look at that one and modify it for use with your Vive. I believe that the distortion file has been modified a little bit since then. You can kind of search for a more modern one on Reddit. And the biggest thing with this is that you have a bigger sweet spot. Again, you can view more of your screen with this kind of adapter mod. And at the same time, I think that the Fresnel circles are extremely annoying. I've had, a lot of problems with kind of just having God rays all over the place and having, major distortion on the kind of sides of my view when using the HTC Vive. And so I think that this mod in particular is just a big win in regards to just clarity and in terms of just being a really nice alternative to the Gear VR lenses, which even though they have a bigger sweet spot, they're a lot smaller, so you don't get quite as much of a field of view as you get with these. So the field of view here, you get a slight improvement just because of the fact that you now have these massive, just absolutely ginormous lenses. Now, from what I've heard, the distortion profile on this is still not perfect, so you might get a little bit more VR sick. And also, again, you got to remember that the reason that Valve picked the Fresnel lenses is because they seem to reduce some of the headaches that people typically get by using lenses that are distortion-free in terms of this kind of Fresnel effect of the circular portions of the lenses. Now, for those of you guys that happen to have the Vive wireless adapter, and again, if you want to store the battery pack on your head, this is another one of those options. And it looks like this one might potentially also come with the little headphone attachments. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll get to that one in a little bit as well for clearer audio. But this particular one looks really nice, and again, you don't have to get it in orange. You can get this printed in different colors depending on the material that you pick. But nonetheless, again, very cool little adapter to not have the battery pack on your back or on a strap or off of your belt in case you want to have this thing on your head. Now, going back to the mixed reality stuff, this one looks to be designed for the C920 Logitech webcam. Again, with the Vive Puck for mixed reality use cases. I'm not really going to delve into this one too much more, but you kind of get the idea. You mount the camera on this thing as well as the Vive Puck, and then you're able to place the camera virtually in the world wherever you need it to be. Now this one's kind of a cool design because this one basically mounts the Vive controller into a more gun-like kind of casing. So I personally think this is pretty neat because even though it doesn't necessarily do anything necessarily, it does make for a pretty cool attachment that you can use in games where you have single-handed shooting and you just want to have that kind of nice, neat look to your controller. Potentially if you're somebody that runs a VR arcade and you have a high-quality printer, this is a really nice accessory to have. Kind of makes the whole thing look a little bit more cyberpunk than it typically does. Now here we go, going into another gunstock here. This one's specifically designed for the original ones, and it's got what looks to be an adjustable cheek piece potentially on here, but at the same time, you've got a kind of more common sort of grip angle, also more common length for the shoulder stock as well. It doesn't seem like the stock can kind of be moved back or forward, which is a bit of a kind of shooting in the dark issue here, because if it doesn't fit your specific body type, or if you have like longer arms than the shoulder stock is designed for, then there's not too much that you can really do. But on the other hand, again, this is another budget way of getting into VR gun stocks here. Moving on to another one, this is another kind of cheaper design in here. So this one in particular is designed again for the Vive wands, and you can move the wands forward and back. But with this one you get no adjustable cheek piece, and the shoulder stock once again is kind of a fixed quantity here, so you can't necessarily do much about it. Once it's there, it's pretty much there, and you can't do a whole lot. but on the other hand, the ability to use basically magnetic attachments here for the wands makes this one of the better ones out there, mainly due to the fact that when you use magnets like this for this sort of thing, it makes it really easy to take the wands out and then just proceed with doing whatever other things you decide to do in that game world, which I think is absolutely massive and a must. The one downside I found with this, especially when testing the magnet grip stock from Mammut, was that sometimes they're a little bit difficult to remove, or more difficult than I feel like they should be, and that's a bit of a limitation of this particular design. I think if you were to use something like electromagnets, where you can just toggle the controller to turn off the magnetic connection to then be able to take it out, would probably be ideal. But nonetheless, as far as budget builds go, as opposed to spending 180 that I spent on my Mammut stock, you could be having something like this for like 40, $50 tops, maybe even cheaper if you don't have to print it. You could just get the magnets, and at that point it's just a matter of getting some hardware to get this up and running. So neat design. Now, if you guys have a kind of handy cam, which I happen to have, and you have the original Vive wand or Vive Pro wand, it really doesn't matter. You can also use this kind of camera rig system as well. I'm not going to get into it too much more, as at this point it should be fairly self-explanatory, but again, this will allow for a really cool mounting option if you decide to use a higher definition camera. Now, for those of you that wanted to go with the Miller headgear adapter, again, I've done a video on this before, but this is one of the adapters that you may want to look into using. Again, depending on the size head that you have, and depending on how it mounts to your specific Vive, this is one of the options available there. If you want to kind of look into this more, there are some tutorials available on YouTube on how to actually mount this whole thing together, so feel free to take a look at those and see exactly how this will work for you. Now, you can see here that many people have kind of created their own different adapter versions for this, some better than others. You'll just have to kind of try them, especially if you have a 3D printer at home, and go from there. Now, the other option here is you've got some camera mounting options for the original HTC Vive. Again, should you want to use some kind of pass-through feature, and if you want a better camera than what's available on the Vive, this is a potential solution for you there. Again, I'm not going to really get into this one too much, as it's fairly self-explanatory for those people that want to do the dev on this part on their own. Now, this particular base station mount is, I think, one of the coolest things that I've seen in a long time. And the reason for this is that if you couple a system like this with a quick disconnect mount, that means that you can take your base stations on and off and have them remotely powered pretty much wherever you go. And this is huge, I think, because I have not seen anybody actually build one of these. I mean, maybe there's some obscure YouTube channel that has tested this before. I haven't seen it personally, but again, to me, this is a game changer potentially for mounting these things, or even traveling with them to a friend's house. Again, because you may not necessarily have access to, or easy access, I should say, to be able to mount these things on a wall somewhere, or to be able to connect into a socket. So this makes life just that much easier, because again, you don't have to bother with connecting into a socket, you just run off this battery pack. Of course, the downside here is that the battery packs do need to be recharged, but at the same time, there's a little cable in here that you can connect to recharge them when you're not using them. So potentially, you don't have to have huge wires draped everywhere. You can just use this kind of really clean and minimal design and be able to have battery-powered base stations wherever you go. Now, this one's kind of neat. This is a head cooler for the HTC Vive. I would assume that it probably works just as fine for the Vive Pro as it does for the original. Probably works just fine on the Index as well. If you're one of those people that plays a whole lot of Beat Saber, or Super Hot, or games like Pistol Whip, Audica, or any of those things where you tend to be on the move a lot, this is a potential good cooling solution for you there. It just runs off the USB power in your headset. Keep in mind, if you use the wireless headset and this is running off of a battery pack, or through the headset and still off of the battery pack, then you end up draining the battery a lot faster this way. But nonetheless, it's a cool thing that this exists, because some people do get hot, or sometimes if you play during the summer, this can make a pretty big cooling difference for you. Now, moving back into the fans for the wireless adapters, This one is made for the HTC Vive Pro wireless adapter. Of course, this is going to work with the Vive Focus as well. Doesn't really matter because it uses the same adapter, but for those of you guys that have overheating problems or you feel like it heats up too much, this is a perfect solution. They even tell you exactly which fan they use, so you can go ahead and buy this, get it 3D printed, and then have a nice and cool HTC Vive Pro. Now, those of you folks that use, again, the Miller headgear and you want a kind of inbuilt headphone solution, this is one of those options for you out there, which is actually extremely comfortable. I find these headphones are really good quality. They have a semi-open back design to them, which means that they have pretty good quality in terms of the audio stage. And this is pretty crucial, I find, for VR, because a lot of times what you really want is a more open stage in order to be able to hear what's going on around your environment. The downside to these is that they will leak some outside sound in, but on the other hand, because they're compatible with the Miller headgear mod, you get the comfort and the built-in headphone kind of options at the same time without having to run additional headphones over the top of this thing, which may not necessarily be possible due to the fact that you will have a really awkward angle because of the top mount head strap here in order to be able to listen to custom headphones should you decide to go with that method. So again, for those of you guys that do use the Miller head mod or head mount mod, this is a really great kind of option for getting built-in sound that looks great and actually has pretty good performance as well. Moving on, these are the clips that I was talking about earlier for the Vive Pro. Those of you guys that have found that the headphones tend to kind of get out of your ears, or they don't seem to snap into place as much as they should to stay snug against your ears, this is the solution for that problem. The downside again with this is that you will kind of tend to have more pressure on your ears as a result of this, but the upside is that you will not have to worry about the headphones getting out of the way, and that means you'll have nice, clear, crisp sound whenever you're playing all of your games. So again, straightforward mod, but extremely useful. This one is, again, for the HTC Vive, but also the Oculus as well. In this particular case, you've got top mount adapters that this particular kit uses. And as you can see, it's actually pretty modular in terms of its support. And you also have a really nice cheek rest with this, which is a huge step up from the one we saw earlier, because in that one, the cheek rest was not adaptable, and you had the shoulder stock kind of going off downwards this way. Here you have the options of multiple kinds of grip attachments, again, adjustable cheek rest, which is huge, and, you know, this is, again, a much cheaper option than some of the other stocks here, and especially since you don't have to pay 10 bucks, that means that, again, you have a lot more feasible options here for mounting. And you can see, I don't know if I can actually click on this picture here, but here are the various controllers that it supports. So you can see that the Windows Mixed Reality controllers are supported, as well as the Odyssey controller. All of this is included, which is incredible. And of course, if you use, you know, these magnets, then these are attachable in such a way that you can quickly detach these from the controller and be able to then do whatever other actions that you happen to want to use in your specific game that you are playing at the time. Really wide support here. You got Oculus, Vive, Windows Mixed Reality, and Samsung's controllers, which are a little bit different from the Mixed Reality stuff from the rest of the Microsoft crowd. They don't seem to support the Index controllers at this time, or the Oculus Rift stuff, or I apologize, the Oculus Quest controllers, but assuming that they'll probably have a version 3 out at some point, if they don't already, that support this. But as it stands, this is a cool thing for kind of legacy headsets here. Going back to the TPcast here, if you happen to have the Vive ecosystem stuff and you also have a TPcast wireless adapter, then you can mount the base station and have the TPcast attached right next to it, which is a really nice option for those of you that want to, again, kind of maintain that clean look. I'm not going to say too much about this, as again, this is self-explanatory, so we'll move on to the next thing. This is one of those adapters that I think looks really clean, really nice, gives it a really kind of cyberpunk look, I think, in terms of the mounting options, and potentially looks a little bit less clunky than those kind of maneuverable mounts that are on a ball joint. So again, if you have the Vive, base stations, the original ones, this is a really nice clean look for those that you can use. Now going back to the Vive Pro battery pack, if you happen to use like an Anker power cord like I do, or the battery that they happen to be using in here, again, they have this one that they've linked to on Amazon. This is another great mounting option if you don't want to mount the basic battery to your Vive Pro, but you want to go aftermarket. Again, great design. You don't have to print it in this ugly color, and at the same time you get extended playtime with your specific headset. So I highly recommend going with a battery bank this big. It makes a huge difference, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend mounting it to your head. But if you do decide to go for that all-in-one look, again, you're more than welcome to it. This one is another one of those HTC mounting brackets, so I'm not going to say too much about it, as it should be fairly self-explanatory. This particular one is another fan mount mod. This one looks, I think, a little bit cleaner than some of the others. It actually looks like it might have been built that way from the start, so very cool design on this one, especially the kind of honeycomb the stuff that you see on the back here. But this does mount to the stock battery, so I'm not sure if you can expand this to work with the bigger battery bank. I'm not entirely sure on that one. It looks like it uses kind of the standard mounting for the battery bank as the others have, but again, you may want to check that out on your own and have a really cool, neat cooling solution that also includes the battery bank at the same time. This is another one that uses the basic battery bank, but this one seems like it's a little bit more open-ended in terms of what battery banks you can stick in there, because it doesn't have the little endpoints. And again, you have the ability to mount the fan to this specific adapter so that everything looks nice and clean for those of you guys running the wireless stuff. Now this one is a battery bank adapter that is specific to, it looks like the deluxe audio strap, if you happen to be using that with the wireless adapter. So those of you still using the deluxe audio strap, this is another good mounting option for you on the Vive ecosystem stuff. This one I included in here because I know some people lose their wall mounts. So, I'm going to drop this one in the link to the description of the video, so you can always 3D print this one or be able to order it online without necessarily having to go back to HTC, because as we all know, they take forever. So this is a good option for you too here. Now this particular adapter is one that I really like because it's basically very compatible with the stock stuff, but at the same time it's a little bit cleaner looking and allows you to mount your base stations on a tripod, which again uses the standard camera mount if you get the proper nut for it, and that means that you can mount your base stations in a movable tripod and be able to take them with you wherever you decide to go. Now for those of you guys that broke your original Vive clips, this is a good alternative for you, and you can potentially use other elastic straps with the headset by going with this option. So again, these buckles are available for you as a replacement option without having to go back to HTC Vive. Now, this was the Evolve strap that I was talking to you guys about earlier, which is more of a halo type design, and the reason why I like this design so much is because this particular thing makes the headset so much more comfortable that it's not even funny. And in addition to that, you're able to flip the headset out of the way to be able to see whatever it is that you're doing. To me, I think this is the ultimate head strap that you can have for the HTC Vive because it's an all-in-one solution. It looks really clean. Again, you can run your custom headphones. In this case, it looks like the guy is using what seems like in-ear monitors for that at least second part. And it looks like you've got some 8kg headphones right here at the current picture that we're looking at here. But the biggest thing with this is that if you've been a fan of the Halo type designs such as the PSVR, this is probably the best thing for you. I highly recommend it. I tried it at a buddy's house and I think there's really no going back. And especially if you're a developer, just having the ability to do this and move the headset out of the way, absolutely massive. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm not sure if this one's compatible with the HTC Vive Pro. You may want to check with a developer on this one. But again, this one has kind of a multi-piece design to it that you can print separately, and you've got a really nice setup in here for making the Vive as extremely comfortable as it's probably ever going to get, especially considering that now Vive is not really going to be releasing any more stuff for this particular older unit anymore. And last but not least, Those of you guys who still have a DK2 or have DK2 lenses, you can option to put those into your HTC Vive, and again, this allows for bigger sweet spots, no circles, which means you're not going to have God rays, and you're going to be able to have a really nice big field of view. I think these look really nice, and I think potentially if you get the right files for it, the right distortion files, then you've got a really nice ability to do all kinds of different things in terms of making your VR experience better on the original Vive. With this, I'm going to conclude this portion of the video, but stay tuned for stuff that I'm going to do on Oculus. I'll hopefully have that video out for you guys sometime either today or tomorrow. And until next time, it's Crazy Welder, and I'll see you guys soon.